Hello everyone, welcome to the world of solid principles. In this video, I am going to talk about Liskov Substitution Principle, which by name might sound complex, but if you understand these 6 simple rules, which I will be explaining sooner, you will find this principle very simple. So let's begin. To start with the definition, Liskov Substitution Principle states that if you are using a parent class object and consuming operations of that object, then in future, if you replace that object by its derived class object, the code which you have already written for that consumption should not break. Let's try to understand this definition by taking one example. Consider an example where you have an accountant entity having email as an attribute and a method to open an account which accepts customer as an input and returns account entity. We'll take a close look at the contract defined by this entity. The email contract says a valid email of accountant for support will be always available for the consumer. And the contract for open method indicates that it opens an account for a given customer, but it also throws account exception if it is unable to open any account. Now, the consumer of accountant entity will consume it something like this. First of all, it will create the instance of accountant, then it will create the customer for which account has to be created, and then it will consume the open contract, that is method, exposed by accountant entity. Once the account has been successfully created, it will link that account ID with the customer ID, and also using the email attribute of accountant, it will notify accountant about the account creation. Also, since open method contract indicates that it will throw account exception in case of any internal failure, the consumer will try to capture that exception and notify accountant accordingly. Now, at this moment, our customer is happy because of this working code. Now let's try to extend our requirement. So we decided to add a new accountant to manage senior citizen accounts. Now this senior citizen accountant is an accountant, and that's why we went for inheritance. We also decided to override the open method of the accountant entity so that senior citizen accountant can create or can open senior citizen account. Now to override the behavior, if you notice, we have added a condition to check customer age before creating an account, where accountant class didn't have any of such checks. The second change which we did is, after creating an account, instead of checking null and empty for account ID, we have just added a null check only. And the third change which we have done is, whenever we are not able to create an account, we have reinitialized the email attribute and have set it to null. So far, syntactically we have implemented inheritance correctly. We have also changed or extended the behavior of accountant entity in senior citizen accountant. And now we are happily going to introduce this new accountant to our consumer so that they can also start providing senior citizen accounts from their end. This looks nice, right? Okay, let's try to see what damage we are going to provide to our consumers when we provide this kind of code to them. The consumer, when will come to know about senior citizen accountant, will start using instance of that class, and without changing any other line of code, consumer will expect that even using senior citizen accountant, the account should be open for a given customer. Well, this seems okay because we have syntactically followed the correct inheritance in senior citizen accountant, and consumer has also followed our published contract very well. But here comes the first flaw of our design. Senior citizen accountant throws argument exception if the customer age is less than 60. But hey, this was never mentioned in the contract, and so the consumer has not handled that exception. So this is the first break which we have introduced. The second break which we have introduced is because of the account ID validation in accountant entity versus in senior citizen accountant entity. Accountant entity throws account exception if the account ID is either null or empty, and this has been mentioned in the contract. But senior citizen accountant throws account exception only if ID is null. It doesn't throw any exception when ID is empty, which means whenever the ID will be empty, the senior citizen accountant will return an account entity, and this will bring a failure where data store is trying to link customer ID with account ID and the account ID is empty. The third problem will occur where consumer is trying to handle the account exception. So whenever account is not created, consumer will notify accountant about this failure using the email attribute, and the contract of the accountant clearly mentions that the email ID will have a valid value. But if you remember, senior citizen accountant, when unable to open an account, resets that email to null. This is going to bring a failure when consumer tries to notify to this email ID where the email is null. Well, you must be wondering, we followed the correct syntax of inheritance. Our compiler went well. We ran our code, we tested our code, everything was working fine. So what exactly happened at consumer end that brought these issues? Well, if we had followed the 6 basic rules provided by Liskov Substitution Principle, we could have never ended with these issues. So let's try to understand them one by one. The first rule is from the contract category, which says preconditions cannot be strengthened in derived classes, which means if the parent method has not mentioned anything specific to pre-checks and the parent method also doesn't do any kind of pre-checks when the operation is executed, derived class must not add any pre-checks to, and if needed, that's a contract change and should be notified to the consumer accordingly. The second point is where the parent method has mentioned in the contract that it throws an exception if certain pre-check fails. Then only the derived class is supposed to add its own pre-checks, but ensuring the strength of the checks are maintained. The simple example to understand these points is where a Maruti car guarantees to have maximum speed of 100 kmph. Any derived cars from Maruti must agree to this contract. Derived car can reduce the speed from 100 to 90, but it must not exceed it from 100 to 110 because that is breaking the agreement. Now to understand this with respect to our current example, we had accountant entity which was not at all doing any kind of pre-checks at the time of opening an account. But the derived class senior citizen accountant added its own precondition, and this was never mentioned in the contract. Consumer never expected to have any kind of argument exception because of such kind of pre-checks. This was clearly a contract break. Let's move to the second contract rule, which indicates that the post conditions cannot be weaker in derived class as compared to the parent class. Which means if the parent method has mentioned in the contract that it does some kind of checks on the generated response or throws any exception if the response is invalid, then the derived class must also add the checks on the response, ensuring those checks on the response are not weaker than what was parent actually doing. They can be of course stronger than the parent checks. The simple example to understand this point is when a Maruti dealer guarantees to provide at least 5% discount, then any derived dealer from the Maruti must agree to it. The discount can be increased to 10% by the derived entities, but they cannot reduce it to less than 5% because that will break the original agreement. Now, to understand this with our original example, the accountant entity, after generating an account, was doing a post check to ensure the account ID must not be null and must not be empty. But the senior citizen accountant modified that condition and it got weaker because the check was made only to ensure the ID is not null. This was clearly a contract break. It is okay to increase the strength of these post checks, but you should not make them weak. So, for example, you could have added the same checks to ensure that the ID is neither null nor empty. Also, you could have added more conditions with it to ensure ID length is greater than 10. This is okay because you are extending the parent behavior without breaking the original contract. The third rule is about invariants, which means if the parent class agrees to remain in certain condition after the operation has been executed, the derived class must also agree to remain in the same condition after that operation has been executed. The simple example to understand this point is where a Maruti car dealer guarantees that the condition of a car when you visited the showroom for the first time will be same as compared to when you actually visit to buy that car. Which means if you visited the showroom and have confirmed that the car has 0 dents, then when you purchase that car, the same car must have 0 dents too. Now, to understand this with our original example, the accountant entity had an email attribute and the contract clearly mentioned that always a valid email ID will be returned. And after opening a successful account, the email attribute still maintained the contract by holding a valid email address. Whereas senior citizen accountant, whenever account fails, replace the actual value of email by null. This was clearly a contract break because in case of account failure, senior citizen accountant was not going to provide an appropriate email ID. The fourth rule is from the variance category, which indicates that there must be a contravariance of the method arguments in the derived class. I know this is very technical, so let's try to understand this with our original example. This is the method signature of open method in accountant entity, that is our base class. The input parameter for this method is of type customer. Now let's see how the consumer was consuming this open method. It was creating the instance of customer and executing the open method. And this was right because the accountant reference was holding the object of accountant entity. But what happens when we replace that entity by senior citizen accountant? This variance rule talks about what we are allowed to do and what we should not do. Let's say we had hierarchy for the customer class, where abstract customer is the parent. Customer class inherits from abstract customer and prime customer class inherits from customer. Now, the contravariance rule indicates that if the parent method is accepting customer entity as an input, then the derived class, when override this open method, can accept customer entity itself or the parent of customer entity, that is abstract customer, but it cannot accept the derived class of customer, that is prime customer is not allowed as an input. And why? Because the derived class reference cannot hold the object of parent class. The second variance rule talks about the covariance, which indicates that there must be covariance of the return types in the derived class. Now what does that mean is, if we take another look at the method signature in the accountant entity and how the consumer is consuming it, consumer is basically collecting the instance of account in the reference of account. Now let's say we have abstract account as a parent class, then the account class inherits from the abstract account and senior citizen account inherits from account class. Now, as per the covariance rule, if the parent method is returning account type, then derived class, when override this open method, can return the account type itself or the senior citizen account, that is the derived classes of the account type, but it cannot return the parent of account type. And why? Because if you see the consumer code again, the consumer is collecting the instance of the account inside the reference of account. So it is easy to understand that this account reference will not be able to hold the instance of its own parent, that is abstract account, and hence it is invalid to have abstract account as a return type. And now the last, sixth rule, which indicates that no new exceptions can be thrown by the derived class unless they are part of the existing exception hierarchy. What does that mean is, say for example, in our case, accountant entity throws account exception in case of account payment. Let's say we have a hierarchy where account exception is the parent class and bad account exception is the derived class. Now as per the rule, senior citizen accountant can throw either account exception or bad account exception, because both of these exceptions will fulfill the contract. But throwing communication exception will be a bad choice, because though you can, you must not throw that exception, as it was never mentioned in the contract. And if you are willing to do that, make sure you update your contract and notify your consumers. Well, that's it. I understand the video was lengthy, but trust me, I have taken a lot of efforts to explain this principle in as simple way as possible. And if you found this video helpful for you, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and do share it with all of your friends. This is Sagarwal, and I am happy to share more and more knowledge with you. Hope OptimusGrowth channel helps you to grow and let you grow the others. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you so much.